Yo, 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 what's going on? It's your boy, Shawnee Sean. And it looks like the NFL coaching carousel is just about over. It's been spinning pretty fast over the past few weeks, but it looks like all these guys have new homes and these teams have new leaders. So pretty exciting. But let's break down some of the newest hires. And some of the guys that honestly didn't get hired. Pretty surprising when it's really all said and done. But today, the Washington Commanders choose Dan Quinn to be their head coach. Definitely facing some skepticism as it's within the division. He has actually been very successful over the past few years with the Cowboys. I think they had a top 12 defense the past few years and one assistant coach of the year last year or 2 years ago. So definitely had some success, but was not the most successful head coach when he was in Atlanta and hasn't really done anything since winning a Super Bowl in Seattle. Surprising that he didn't actually go to Seattle. They had a lot of connections. They went with Mike McDonald, who I don't know too much about. He's pretty young, from the Ravens, and actually spent a year with Harbaugh's brother in Michigan, as the defensive coordinator for both, and was with the Ravens before then, coaching up them the our linebackers. Um, I think he's 36, so very young, half the age of Pete Carroll. So if he is successful, it bodes very well for the Seahawks. Um, Going back to Dan Quinn, I think that they really, and the Commanders, I think that they were really putting all their eggs in the basket for Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions. It sounds like he wanted to stay in Detroit. They're running it back, which is awesome for Detroit and exciting for Lions fans, but not so much for Commanders fans as they missed out on one of the hotter names on the market. So Dan Quinn's definitely a decent consolation, but I think it's more of the same. I think it's more of a band-aid. Surprising that they didn't even go after Bill Belichick. He has some connections to DC and the Northern Virginia area, I'm pretty sure historically. Um, but I think for Dan Quinn to be successful with the Commanders, he's going to have to last at least 3 4 years because you could have had Belichick or even Vrabel, if you wanted a defensive mind guy. Both those guys are great. And, with Belichick, maybe you're not expecting him to stay long term, but 3 4 years, and if Dan Quinn doesn't survive that, then, you might as well have gone with a better guy. But, we'll see. Bill Belichick will most likely reevaluate the coaching market next year. I doubt he'll take an assistant. Um, at least on the NFL level, maybe a college assistant or something. I'm just teasing. But Dan Quinn, I don't really like the hiring. I think it's like we'll say a C minus. I think it's average. I think for keep getting Dan Quinn, you could have just kept Ron Rivera, and not had that much of a difference. But I mean, the defense should improve, considering they traded away all their assets, so they can only really get a little bit better. Moving on to Mike McDonald and the Seahawks, which I were alluding to. He's half the age of Pete Carroll. I'm definitely going in a new direction. Had a lot of success with both Harbaugh's and the defense and linebackers of the Ravens. Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen are both premier linebackers. So it'll be interesting to see how the Seahawks transition their defense from one defensive minded head coach to another. And also the development of the offense in Geno Smith. Curious to see who he brings in as their coordinators. I don't know if all these coaches have assembled all of their staffs yet, but within the upcoming week or two, those staffs should all be assembled. So I like the Mike McDonald hiring. I still don't know too much, and I think he's a little young, but I'd say B plus. Yeah. but Mike Vrabel was there, and he also seemed like a great option. And honestly, Dan Quinn seemed like a better fit for Seattle. So I think that that would have been a better fit also. But anyway, Raheem Morris goes to Atlanta Falcons. And I actually like this pick. I like a lot of the former players getting into coaches, as we'll get into with Gerard Mayo and Antonio Pearson, even D'Amico Ryans this past year. Um, but Raheem Morris with the Atlanta Falcons definitely should bring some experience and success. The Falcons are definitely in the right direction. They really rebuilt that defense on free agency and trades last year, and it seems to be boding in the right direction. They definitely need help at quarterback. Um, Taylor Heineke and what's the kid? Number 8, not Spencer Rattler. Why am I thinking? It's something like that. He wasn't good enough. I think he was a Cincinnati quarterback. Why can't I think of his name? Anyway, they need an upgrade at quarterback, but a lot of great weapons. And, they might actually get a quarterback in the draft or free agency or even a combination. I wouldn't be surprised if they landed with a guy like Justin Fields or Russell Wilson. But also, even if they got one of those guys, I wouldn't be surprised if they also drafted a guy later on like Bo Nix, or Jordan Travis from Jordan Travis from FSU. Um, one of those later, or even Spencer Rattler. I think I said his name a minute ago. He was pretty high up on a lot of quarterback ratings earlier back in the day, and has kind of fallen off. But I think he still has NFL talent. But we're not really evaluating quarterbacks today right now. We're doing coaches. So Raheem Morris, I like. Nothing too special. I'm gonna give it a B. Prove me otherwise. I like with a lot of these guys, especially with the younger guys with less experience. It really depends on the coordinators that they bring in and if they surround themselves with other guys. Because a big thing with coaching is, especially with head coaching these days, is you're really managing the whole team and the whole organization. Um, where it's not just the offense or defense. And a lot of the time, these coaches are actually delegating the play calling. So even if they are an offensive or defensive minded head coach, a lot of the time they aren't even making the calls on a play to play basis. They're delegating those, which is honestly a good thing because a head coach has a million things to deal with. Um, it's not just the media and the players; it's 100 other little things in between. Moving on to Jim Harbaugh, who I think is probably the prized possession of the coaching hiring ring this year. I don't really know what I'm saying. He was pretty much the most sought after, in my opinion, and it seemed like he was a perfect fit for the Los Angeles Chargers since they had the vacancy at their head coach. They have the best quarterback situation, and they don't really have a great cap situation, the Chargers, but I think that they can free up some money or at least renegotiate some contracts. I know Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Joey Bosa all have some big cap hits. So will be interesting to see how they turn the corner and lead this team in the future. But they do have a quarterback, and that's usually one of the hardest pieces to find. So Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert, I hope that that is a recipe for success, and we will see next year. But Harbaugh's got a great track record of player development and of success really everywhere he's gone in the college and NFL ranks. So I expect him to do pretty well. Year one may be a little tough for the Chargers. I'm just being realistic with that cap situation. But long term, I think that they got the right guy. And he should look pretty darn good in that powdered blue and khakis. Moving on to another guy who looks pretty good, if you ask me. I guess I don't know. Dave Canales, a young coach who is now with the Panthers. Oh, and if I had to rate Jim Harbaugh, I guess I think that's an A plus. I think that that was a home run of a head coach hiring. Moving on to Dave Canales, though. Think he's pretty optimistic about him and Bryce Young's future together. Dave Canales has done a wonderful job the past few years, really re-establishing some quarterbacks that some people had forgotten about. Baker Mayfield had his best year of his career this year under Dave Canales as his OC, and the year before, Dave Canales was overseeing Geno Smith in Seattle, who also had one of a resurgence in one of his best seasons. So there's a lot of pressure on the development of Dave Canales and Bryce Young, or developing Bryce Young. Last year they had a lot of, um, I guess, a similar tactic with Frank Reich, and I think they had Josh McCown. That obviously didn't really work out, although they really gave up a lot. Panthers have lost so many trades over the past years that they have really set themselves just so far back. I feel bad for anyone who has to work with David Tepper. I'm sure he's a very good owner and willing to spend money. I liked Frank Reich, not Frank Reich. I mean I do like Frank Reich, but I liked who was the Matt 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 Reich Matt Reich, yeah, wait, Frank Reich and Matt Rule. There we go. Sorry. But I liked Matt Rule, at least when he was at Temple and Baylor. T for Temple U. But Dave Canales, wish you the best of luck. I think he had his opening press conference today with the Carolina Panthers. We'll see who he surrounds himself with. I don't know if there's anything exciting that came out of that. Give me 1 second. Yeah, I mean maybe he can draw parallels to how Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence's development in year two, the way that Dave Canales and Bryce Young can maybe come together. But probably not. We will see. Anyway, moving on to the next head coach. And that would be, where did my notes go? There we go. And Canales, I think, is a B minus. He's really just unproven. I like him a lot, but I'm not really sure about him long term. We will see. Gerard Mayo on the New England Patriots. This was one of my favorite hirings in this year's class and cycle. Patriots lose, or I guess part ways with Bill Belichick. Get a fresh voice in Gerard Mayo, who had been their long-term linebackers coach, and now head coach. I think he has a lot of potential. I feel like he could be this year's DeMeco Ryans as far as a former player that just has a lot of love and respect and admiration in the locker room. Really is a player's coach as a former player, and I think will get New England going in the right direction. They can really only go up. I think they only had 3 or 4 wins this year, so hopefully they can build upon that. Maybe get a new quarterback. I see Jalen Daniels mocked to them a lot. So that would be pretty cool. And just building on to the CJ Stroud DeMeco Ryans relationship, Gerard Mayo and Jaden Daniels slash quarterback that they draft could have a similar relationship. So we will see. One of my favorite head coaching hires of the offseason, we'll give it an A or an A minus. An A. Like a 94, 93. All right, moving on to the Antonio Pierce and the Las Vegas Raiders. I really liked this. Not really the most exciting in the coaching carousel, considering he was the interim coach, but he did a fantastic job and really won the players over in the locker room, and I think that goes a long way. So the Raiders promote Antonio Pierce to head coach, defying all expectations, and we will see how he does as a full-time head coach. He was dealt a pretty tough hand as Mike McDaniel was fired, but we will see how he does. I think that they need to bring in a quarterback. Hopefully, they get in a guy like Justin Fields or Russell Wilson, or maybe they draft a guy. But I don't necessarily like them with a rookie quarterback. I think they need to get a vet. and maybe draft another guy. Aiden O'Connell clearly wasn't enough, and Jimmy G sadly just might not have much more in the tank. And we got one or two left. Brian Callahan with and Antonio Pierce, easy a B plus, A minus. Not the most sexy because he was already there, but I like him, and I think the players like him. Really depends on the OC and DC that he brings in. Although I've heard some rumors that he's interested in Chip Kelly, so we will see if Chip makes his return to the NFL. As an Eagles fan, actually like Chip Kelly and I guess defend him more than others. Moving on to Callahan and the Tennessee Titans, and I think this was not a good move. I thought Mike Vrabel was one of the best coaches out there, and the fact that he doesn't have a job is still very surprising. But the Titans opt for Brian Callahan, raising some questions about the fit. I think it's more of the owner's choice and not necessarily the best for the organization. And we will see. Callahan's got a background in, I don't know, I guess proving doubters wrong, but we will see how he does. This team was probably one of the worst situations to go to. They don't really have a great quarterback. They don't really have a very young talent, that much young talent. This is a complete rebuild, if you ask me. You might have Will Levis, maybe have something there, but that's pretty much it. Derrick Henry's pretty much going to go. I don't know what you got with Treylon Burks. I like Tajay Spears, but that's a running back. Like, I don't know. And I don't even know who they got on defense, really. So good luck to you, Titans. I think that's a C. Prove me otherwise, but not the best head coach hiring. But that's pretty much the head coach landscape. It's clearly evolving as we go as far as the OCs and DCs, so we will keep you posted and updated on how everything turns out. Biggest surprises are really that Bill Belichick and Vrabel still don't have jobs. A lot of people were questioning if Sirianni would keep his job. He's still in Philly. We got Vic Fangio on defense, which is nice, and are bringing in a Cowboy on offense, so we'll see about how that works. Anyway, peace, love, and happiness. I'm going to play some video games with my friend, and we'll see you next time.